New York is voting in a new mayor, and all eyes are on Zohran Mamdani. Now, he's 34 years old and he's slated to win. And if he does, he will be the youngest ever mayor that New York City has ever had. He will also be the first Muslim mayor that this city has had. His rise has rattled the entire American political establishment. Donald Trump, for example, has said, and I'm quoting, that New York will not survive if he wins, if Mamdani takes office, calling him a communist, which is worse than a socialist, according to Donald Trump. But this particular journey is important on so many different levels, which is what we're going to look at in this story. To begin with, this is not just a political story. Zohran Mamdani's rise in New York City is a culmination of a 2-decade journey for the Muslim community reclaiming its visibility and its voice after 9/11. Remember, in the years immediately after 9/11, the Muslims of New York lived almost apologetically in suspicion and surveillance and silence, and they sort of hid themselves away. To see a Muslim man who was born in Africa, in Uganda, who was raised in Queens, to unapologetically talk about his faith when he's running a campaign, standing on the brink of leading America's biggest city, is profoundly symbolic at this point. It represents his generation, the current sort of 30-year-olds or 35-year-olds who refuse to be defined by that suspicion about their race or their religion. They are organized, they are voting, they're running for office, they're demanding no longer to be seen as outsiders, but as actual New Yorkers shaping the city's future. Mamdani's victory won't just be his own, it will belong to his entire community, and his community is multifold. So yes, his community is Muslims in New York because that's the religion he follows, but he's also linked to the Indians of New York because his mother is Indian. He's also linked to those who have come from Africa because that's where he was born. He is linked to all immigrants or outsiders or people who don't fit into the cookie-cutter white American idea. This is a victory, or would be a victory, on so many different levels. Now let's take a look very quickly as to who he is, right? So he was born, like I said, in Uganda in 1991. He's a young man. He is the son of a Ugandan scholar, Mahmood Mamdani, and celebrated Indian filmmaker, we all love her, Meera Nair. He was raised in New York. He's married to a Syrian-American artist called Rama Duwaji, and also not traditionally white American. Before politics, he worked as a foreclosure prevention counselor. He's volunteered for local campaigns. He has described himself as a democratic socialist and joined the Party of Democratic Socialists of America, and he won a seat in the New York State Assembly. Since then, he introduced apparently 20 bills, mostly about housing, public transport, social equality, out of which 3 were successful and passed into law. He's also a hip-hop artist called Young Cardamom, and you can look up some of the work that he's done. Written a song for Disney, apparently. Now, he's openly celebrated his Indian roots, his multicultural roots. Remember, his mother is Hindu and his father is Muslim. He's talked about how he grew up understanding the stories and the festivals and the faith of the Hindu people. He's spoken at temples across the city, and he talks about how these ideals make him a proud Indian American. Now, but the really interesting thing from my point of view of why everybody's looking at him right now is the kind of things he's promising. He's talking about making life affordable again in New York. So freezing rent in rent stabilized tenants, actually building affordable housing, using city resources, making city buses free. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Providing free childcare for New Yorkers who are, 6 weeks to 5 years old. Launching this is really fascinating, city-owned grocery stores that will sell essentials without profit margins. If this is sounding familiar to you, it's a cooperative, effectively Apna Bazaar, right? So the city will actually create stores and they will not be privately owned. This is radical, right, for America. And it will sell Janhit Mein Jari without taking any profit. So these are all very very against the grain of the American ideal. And I'll tell you why that is. But in the meantime, let me tell you that Donald Trump has thrown his weight behind Governor Andrew Cuomo, who is the person who's going up against, most likely, there are 2 people going up against Mamdani, but Cuomo is likely to actually give him a run for his money in some way. He's calling him the only person who can save New York. On Truth Social, Trump wrote that Mamdani, under him, the city will become a complete, total economic, social disaster. He's also threatened to cut off minimum federal funding from the central government or the federal government, to which Mamdani has fired back, saying that we're actually talking about the real crisis, which is cost of living, and that is why Donald Trump is threatened. I also want to point out the other big city that has a Muslim mayor right now is London. Sadiq Khan, who is the mayor of London, and Donald Trump, in a United Nations General Assembly speech in September this year, said, and I'm quoting, "I look at London where you have a terrible mayor, terrible mayor. They want to go to Sharia law." In the past, he has said that the mayor of London is a stone cold loser and he has done a terrible job as a mayor. So Donald Trump has not minced words when it comes to people of the Muslim religion, especially leading cities. And now we're looking at New York. Remember, Trump is a New Yorker. His entire, he grew up in New York. His entire fortune, in real estate was made in New York. So Zohran Mamdani is right now, as per the polls, leading most likely to win. He has the support of very young people. He has the support of immigrant people. He has the support of Hindus. He has the support of Muslims, which make up apparently about 1 million in strength in New York. And so he is most likely to win. Now, the reason why he's making the rich businessmen and the capitalists very nervous is, like I said, it goes against the idea of New York, which is, it's not just any city in America. This is the crown of their capitalist economy. So, and he's actually publicly said that he doesn't believe billionaires should exist. He doesn't believe society should be marked by such extreme inequality. So he's talked repeatedly about redistribution of wealth, about hikes in taxes, about public ownership. All of these things that he's talking about, city-owned grocery stores, rent freezing, free fare buses, all of these things are an open challenge to profit margins, right? They're an open challenge to real estate investments, to dynamics, to business cost structures. This is not something that people will enjoy. Remember, New York is also the bellwether of global capitalism. So not only is it the sort of crown jewel of American capitalism, it's a crown jewel of global capitalism. It sort of leads the way. So it's not just any city. It's a global financial, real estate, media, corporate hub. It's where their stock market is. It's their beating heart of their economy. So a progressive mayor who's talking about redistribution of wealth, it sends a signal to the markets, to business capital, to other cities, that bold reform is feasible, that it's something that can be done. But obviously, people who are capitalists are not going to be happy by what he's suggesting. Also, many Democrats are centrist and business friendly. So Mamdani's sort of insurgent campaign rewrites rules of access and power. It's also not entirely what the Democrats have gone after this entire time. So it's really confusing. He's also been very open about his stand that is pro-Palestine. He has been, it's making a lot of the Jewish citizens, apparently, of New York will probably vote against him, is what we are hearing. But we'll have to see in terms of numbers what that actually plays out and what that means. Now, here's the thing. America is a two-party system. So you have the Republicans who have always been very conservative. They're conservative in terms of family values. They're conservative in terms of religion. They're conservative in terms of how they do business. And on the other side, you have the Democrats who are liberal. So it's always been liberal versus conservative. Both sides have always been capitalist. Now you have a different sort of left doing a resurgence. Now, some of the people who are looking at this are saying, could this be a green shoot of a new idea? Because at the same time, the Republicans, led by Donald Trump at this point, have become fairly right in terms of their, in terms of the way they look at business, in terms of the way they look at capitalism, in terms of the way they look at religion and conservatism. So was there room there for the Democrats to become more left rather than just the liberal idea that they were sitting on? And there were a lot of people who felt that the Democrats were not seeming interesting. They didn't have anything new to offer. They didn't really have an idea that would take on what Donald Trump was offering. Not that anyone is saying Mamdani is going up against Trump at this point, but could it be a suggestion of a different idea? if it does in fact work. And that's the reason why everybody's looking at it right now, because it's different from what the Democrats have offered up until now. So the entire platform of what he's saying in terms of freezing of rent and giving you groceries without the margins, giving you free buses, giving you free childcare, it's apparently really resonating with the younger voters and working class voters. Remember, in America right now, you have people who are in their early 20s who feel like their college education was just took too much money out of their pockets. They're not able to afford their rent. They're not able to leave their parents' houses. This sounds like a good idea for him. Now, his campaign is less tied to a traditional corporate donor network and is looking more at community organizing. So it's sort of it's stepped out of the playbook of how politics is done in America up till now. And like I said, the race is for New York City. It is a global financial hub. So a victory here, which signals the heartland of capitalism, would actually maybe send signals across the world, and that is something to obviously look at. So and just to explain to you, liberalism, which I was telling you about of the Democratic Party, has always been about individual rights, free markets, equal opportunity. The left, on the other hand, is about economic equality, about redistribution of wealth, public ownership, and the structural change of capitalism itself. So this is what we're talking about. These are also sort of ideas that are held by Bernie Sanders, by AOC, now Zohran Mamdani. They're talking about more of a democratic socialist. So the Scandinavian idea, the European idea, where everybody pools more in taxes, that there isn't so much of a difference between the very rich and the poor. So it doesn't matter what job you have, your lifestyle doesn't change very drastically, and the government or the state provides you with a lot of basic necessities to make your life easier. That is the Scandinavian idea, and that is what they are actually pushing, calling it democratic socialist and not socialism per se. The mainstream of the Democrats, Biden, Obama, Clinton, they've always been like liberal. So they've been pro-market, they've been pro-free market, they are socially progressive, but they've always been fiscally very cautious. So they don't go into this whole publicly owned idea. And so the idea of a left sort of movement in the US is new, it's interesting, and it's worth actually watching. So this, like I said, yes, it is one man, it is a brown man, it is a racially different man, religiously different man. But the ideas that he's bringing in are also very, very marquee. So this will be an interesting sort of play for the city of New York as we see it actually grow. So let me know what you believe. Do you think that Zohran Mamdani will change the way business is being done in New York and thereby in the US? Will he actually survive the onslaught of Donald Trump? Is this a new idea? Or do you think this is a one-off in this particular race? Leave your comment in the comment section.